unemployment and improve the conditions of the people.
Now, the other thing that seems interesting is they're experimenting with different forms of ownership. They're talking about a new form of socialism, but it doesn't seem to be the socialism we knew from the 20th century, you know, central state-owned property. So what are they doing in that area?
I think that what they're doing is trying, well, explicitly what they say is that they're trying for a middle path between those who say, well, you know, let's just manage capitalism and somehow make it better and, you know, less oppressive. And those who say, no, no, just get rid of capitalism, just, you know, junk it altogether and go for something completely new. They're trying for a middle path. And in this middle path, the notion that there can be one centralized state that controls an undifferentiated mass of workers, that doesn't exist. It's very much a focus on citizens' rights and on collective rights, so that they recognize different communities, different ethnic groups, indigenous and different language-speaking peoples. They call themselves a plurinational state. And what is very important is that they recognize the rights of nature. They say that nature, Pachamama, as they say, has specific rights and duties and obligations that the state must bear to ensure the preservation of nature, and that all citizens and all economic actors also have to ensure the preservation of nature.
Now, there was a controversy where in terms of opening up some of the land that was traditionally considered indigenous peoples' land for mineral exploration and exploitation, there was some real opposition coming from indigenous people who had supported President Correa and from the left on these issues. What did you get some sense of what's happening on that?
Yes, I think that, you know, like everywhere else, these are dynamic situations, and there are pulls and pressures in all directions. So there are the large bourgeoisie and those who are close to the foreign owners and so on, who are extremely upset with what's going on. There are sections of the middle class that are upset at what's going on. And then there are those who are pushing from the left, as it were, those who are pushing for a greater realization of the Constitution. There was a new Constitution brought in 2008, which is excellent, but it's extremely ambitious. And of course, that creates demands that are not so easily met. So it's a very complex situation, and I think the government's response is also inevitably uneven. Sometimes they give way to a particular force, sometimes they reject that force. So I won't say that it's a very clear, homogeneous, straight-line process. It's an uneven process, but the direction of the change is extremely positive.
So in terms of what we in the north and you in the other parts of the south can learn from Ecuador, what else do you think? You talked about the ability to actually raise some tax revenue and go after the elites in that way. What other things do you think people could learn?
Another very interesting thing, that you can improve the conditions of workers. You can provide social security. They passed, first of all, they created a social security institute, and all public employees are, of course, have access, but they also are trying to ensure that all workers have access to social security. And they passed a law that every employer must ensure that their workers get social security, including those who employ domestic workers. And if they don't, they're liable to 2 years imprisonment. Now you can say that's really tough, but the point is that in 2009, they imprisoned a lot of people. So already in 2010, you see that there's a big increase in the number of workers covered with Social Security from 35% to 55%. So these things do make a difference. You can give dignity to workers, you can raise the minimum wages, and you can do that without worsening unemployment rates. So, I think that's very important.
And in terms of the struggle in Ecuador between the elites and the people and the class struggle that takes place there, the power of the elites in all of our countries essentially comes from concentration of ownership, whether
Yes.
it's media or whether it's in minerals or anywhere else in the economy. How do they plan to take on that concentration of ownership, which leads to such political power?
One of the interesting things I found is that a lot of the major decisions have been preceded by referendum. So even, the decision to have a new constitution, the decision to go in for general elections, a number of other important decisions have all been preceded by referendum. And it is the popular vote in that referendum which gives the government that kind of political strength, which gives it the ability to take on vested interests and very powerful lobbies. Well, of course, there are attempts at undermining it. I believe that the role of the US has been less than savory and continues to be so. That there will be internal and external attempts at undermining it.
Well, we'll do a lot more on digging into what's going on in Ecuador. We're going to be interviewing some other academics like Bob Poland, I think, that went with you to Ecuador when you were there. We're going to be talking to, I believe, the finance minister of Ecuador. This is an experiment that deserves a lot more focus. Anything else you want to end with, Jyoti?
Well, no, just to repeat what I said at the very beginning, I think what is most inspiring about this case is that even if it doesn't succeed more than what it already has, it shows that you can do a lot if there is internal political demand for it. And you don't have to worry about the global conditions in order to transform things within your own country.
Thanks very much for joining us.
Thank you.
And thank you for joining us on the Real News Network.